So boom. Today we will be speaking about defensiveness and why the hell it happens to a good amount of us. Well, maybe all of us, honestly. Hey, defensiveness is normal. It happens in the natural world. I know for a fact whenever you're criticized about something, talked about something, and you feel directly related to the subject matter of hand, you will get defensive. It's normal. It's active. It's what we all do. Hey, I'm over here getting it myself sometimes when people leave some dastardly comments towards some things I do, you feel me? But hey, at the end of the day, it happens to us and we're gonna explain why it may happen. The first thing to know about defensiveness is it's rooted in our brain's natural survival instinct. When we feel threatened, whether physically or emotionally, our brain's fight or flight response kicks in. It's our body's way of protecting us from perceived danger. Now, most of the time, danger is not physical, it's emotional. When we perceive criticism, judgment, or disagreement, we often feel like we're being attacked. This can trigger a defensive reaction because it feels like a threat to our self-worth, identity, or a sense of security. Oh, that was disgusting. Now, most of the time, the danger is not physical, it's emotional. When we perceive criticism, judgment, or disagreement, we often feel like we're being attacked. This can trigger a defensive reaction because it feels like a threat to our self-worth, identity, or self of security. You're gonna get defensive because you feel like, hey, it's an attack on yourself, when really people are just talking to talk. A lot of times you get defensive when people are just trying to just state their opinion on something or just feel very strongly towards something. But what also happens when you feel strongly towards something, that other party also feels strongly towards whatever you're saying. So boom, you have two clashing sides. Defensiveness can also be a response to vulnerability. Many people fear being judged or misunderstood, so they put up a wall. They might avoid hearing difficult feedback or even lash out in response to something that hits them too close to home. It's their way of protecting their emotions from getting hurt. And this happens to a lot of people. Like, hey, like, you're gonna feel like some type of response to a vulnerable situation that you've been hit before. Like, let's say in like a random situation. Let's say you have kids, right? And somebody says they don't want to date a woman with a baby mama, like has children. They don't want to deal with the baby mama drama, the baby daddy drama, and all that shit. Like, you're gonna feel an emotional response to defend your child because you have such a huge emotional attachment towards that subject. And that person even talking towards you, he's talking about his own or her own personal preference. But you feel some type of way to say something. It's also important to recognize that sometimes defensiveness is a coping mechanism, an automatic way to avoid feeling bad about ourselves. It's easier to dismiss the criticism or blame someone else than to face the discomfort of our own imperfections. And that's the thing, bro. A lot of people are trying to be perfect. A lot of people are trying to be these perfect individuals, but they don't understand that, hey, bro, just because you're not perfect does not mean you should trample over other people's opinions. That's just it. Like, hey, defensiveness is going to be the barrier that's going to separate you from being a loving and kind individual, because you're going to become so defensive towards that person. You're going to develop a bad scheme towards that person's whole mindset. Defensiveness doesn't help us grow. In fact, it often prevents us from really hearing the feedback and understanding where we might need to improve. When we let our guard down and approach the conversation with an open mind, we're more likely to learn from it, repair relationships, and find solutions together. So now basically, hey, like, when you're being defensive, bro, like, you're not allowing yourself to come into that room with an open train of thought. Like, you're not letting anybody write over what you already have written down in your head. It's like having a conversation with somebody, and the minute you start speaking, they already have the response in their head and they're just waiting to respond. They're no longer listening to you. So defensive people are probably the worst people to have open-ended conversations with. So they're so not welcoming to whatever idea you have in front of you, because they're so ready to spit their own jumbled nonsense your way. Or it might actually make sense and they just don't give a fuck about what you got to say. But that's 9 times out of 10 what's going on when people act defensive. And also, you gotta remember, we all get defensive sometimes. But at the end of the day, like, hey, it's however you track it onto yourself. Because real talk, like, hey, when you get defensive, it's just showing up, just playing on your insecurities. And at the end of the day, emotionally sound people and emotionally strong people, like, hey, they're able to tackle those insecurities and really handle them properly. So you gotta really pay attention to the way you talk. It's gonna shut down a lot of relationships in life, at work, in your family. Like, bro, your defensiveness can shut down a lot of things in front of you and can really impact a lot of relationships you create for the future. So basically, just stop being so defensive. Let your walls down. Just love.